Hi guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to have some Division 7 to Division 11 or 12 ranked online gameplay using none other than Jack Hermansson, who I believe is a hidden gem in the middleweight division, and I'm going to get into those reasons throughout the various gameplay clips. I think we're going to have 3 fights in this video. I think I come up against is it Michael Bisping? I think I come up against Bisping twice, Yoel Romero and Robert Whittaker. So 4 fights, I stand corrected. But before we get into the actual breakdown of the gameplay and why I believe that Hermansson is one of the hidden gems in this division, I just want to say a huge thank you for all the support as of recently on all the videos. Big thank you to everyone that subscribed. I think right now I've just hit over 180 subscribers, which is crazy. Growing at a very good pace and, you know, building a nice community. Thank you for the support on all the videos. And quickly, just let me know in the comments below. I think I know the answer to this one already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. For the next upload, would you rather see the mauling video, which would be the part 3? And for those of you who haven't seen those videos, probably the most popular videos on my channel. I think it's got 4.1k views, the first part, and it's just basically me mauling people online and talking through it. Or would you like to see a Kimura Usman versus GSP matchup I had on online ranked? So let me know in the comments below. I think I already know the answer, like I said, and yeah, I'll get around to recording that video and dropping it next week. Should be a good one. And right now I'm a bit confused when I was fighting this opponent. Obviously this is when the season sort of reset. As you can see, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here. I'm not sure what he's doing. I don't know if he wanted to lose this fight. It's what he seemed like. Maybe he just isn't a very high level player. I wasn't really taking this too serious. I was using this as a feeling out process, to be honest with you. It was a good first fight to have in terms of feeling the skill set and movement wise. Not so much the grappling as of yet to grapple. But yeah, my opponent's just doing weird things. Drop him there with the check left, and then the uppercut hits, land here, and then I'll go just for a fancy little armbar finish just to see how good Jack Hermansson's armbars are. And to get right into it, why I think Jack Hermansson is a hidden gem is, one, he's not used that much. I've come up against him definitely under 5 times, and I play this game a lot and don't fight against him often. Phenomenal submissions, and this is from on top and on the bottom. Very good armbar, very good guillotine, and rear naked choke, and these are the submissions that you should look to go for when using Jack Hermansson. And the key thing is that off his back he's also very comfortable. So in this division you're coming up against a lot of wrestlers. You've got Yoel Romero, you've got Khamzat Chimaev, you've got all these higher level wrestlers that are going to look to take you down, people like Derek Brunson. So coming up against these guys, being comfortable off your back is extremely crucial. I think he has the Perk Crafty submissions as well, which means that submissions are boosted, I believe, off of his back. Stand-up wise, I thought Jack Hermansson was going to feel very, very stiff, and admittedly, he does feel stiff compared to some of the more elite strikers in the division, especially when you look at Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya, obviously the best strikers in the division. Sort of feels a bit like a Darren Till in terms of, I'd say slightly less stiff than Darren Till. There's something about Darren Till's character model which makes him feel peculiar to use, but Jack Hermansson didn't feel too stiff. A good array of combinations, both mixing in the punches and kicks. Obviously not going to be the elite of the elite when it comes to striking, but can definitely hang with those. He feels very long and reachy. In terms of health stats, he seemed to hold up fairly well. Of course, when you're fighting in these sorts of divisions, if you miss time a punch and get hit, especially by someone like we're fighting here, Michael Bisping, you're going to take those rocks, you're going to get those health events. That's only natural. But the teep kicks work really well, the leg kicks work well, and overall I feel like the power transmitted very well from his hands. I feel like whenever I did engage in a interaction in which I felt like I should be dropping my opponent would drop. And that's something to be said. In this division you've got a lot of hard hitters. I think that we all know that Michael Bisping, Robert Whittaker, Jared Cannonier in particular in this division hit like a truck. Kevin Holland, who was my last video. But I don't think people utilise Hermansson enough, and you can really use him as a complete martial artist. Obviously his main aspect is going to be the ground game, in which you can really excel in. And as you can see, I'm not just showing gameplay in which I'm walking through opponents. Right now I'm having a good back and forth with my opponent here, who's taking out and looking to take out my lead leg. And this is something that you'll come up against often in this division. This division is is absolutely stacked on the game. I mean, you can use a wide variety of people, and especially if you're coming up against someone that likes to utilize leg kicks, for instance, Jared Cannonier, if he's landed this many leg kicks, my leg's non-existent right now. Israel Adesanya with the leg kicks as well, and even Robert Whittaker players, you know, throw in those leg kicks here and there, such a useful tool. So that's one thing to be considered. I feel like the legs were there to get hit, but doing a better job of checking the leg kicks as the fight is progressing here. And I'm trying to land those hooks because I feel like that's where the power really comes out from. And the game plan was that I wanted to see how good he was on the feet, so I don't mind standing and trading with Michael Bisping here. I'm going to look to utilise body work and really tear down my opponent's body health, because Bisping has a very, very high cardio stat. So that's the main game plan here. And I know that when the fight eventually does get to the ground, because I am going to look for it to go to the ground, I'm going to have a distinct advantage, and it's up to me to capitalise on that. And that's what you've got to do with Hermansson. If this is someone you should use where you want to test yourself on online ranked, if you don't care too much about your stats and, you know, being in the top 100, and you just want to use the game to test yourself, get better, have fun, because ultimately that is what the game's for. Everyone likes to win, and that's why you get obviously the cheesy players on ranked, and that's understandable. They don't want to lose those points, but I also feel like you become a better player overall when you diversify your range. For instance, I'm not the best striker, so I started using strikers for a long period of time in order to evolve my striking. And when I wasn't the best grappler, I was using a lot of grapple heavy fighters, which forced me to grapple, and therefore my grappling became a lot better as a result of it. And as you can see there, that little combination there to finish that fight, in which we absolutely ripped Michael Bisping. So it shows that Jack Hermansson definitely has the power, and you can definitely string together a well-constructed combination. The teep kicks is something that I really enjoyed utilising. He felt very, very long and rangy. I could keep my opponents at the end of my punches. And coming up against now with Robert Whittaker, as you can see, I think I was in Division 10 for this fight here, so progressing, slowly going up the divisions. And I had quite a few fights with Jack Hermansson. I didn't lose any, which is the main thing. It's just some of them weren't the most entertaining, or they were just rage quits by my opponent. And like I've said in several videos in the past, that whenever my opponent does rage quit, I don't really want to use that in the gameplay. I try to avoid it at all costs. So this is why you're getting these 4 gameplay clips here. And you can't make a middleweight showcase without without facing Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker is the most broken fighter in this division. He's the Petr Yan of the bantamweight. I think him and Petr Yan are levels above everyone else in the game. They just feel so good to use, and especially with Rob's wrestling. And this is the hardest matchup in the division for sure. And by the way I'm coming up against this opponent, you can see that I'm being very, very careful, and I'm trying not to get hit too much, being conservative, throwing when I can, and I'm really trying to use my range, because that's where I can catch my opponent stepping in. And by catching my opponent stepping in, I can potentially do a lot more damage. You can see that I'm utilising the jabs to the body just to not headhunt, and utilising these jabs to the body is then setting up for your opponent to block low, and then you can catch your opponent coming in and do a lot of damage. Good head movement there. I go to clinch and I try to rotate the position in order to get my opponent onto the fence and secure a takedown. However, my opponent ended up getting out, and now I'm not in the best of positions. My opponent's backed me up towards the fence. As you can see, teeing off. You need to be very, very careful when coming up against Robert Whittaker, but just because of the sheer aspect of that power and the volume of punches that can be thrown per second, basically, by how fast Rob is, and the power really does transmit, whether that's boxing or kickboxing with Rob. Teep kick my opponent there, regains control of the centre of the octagon, but you can see I'm not reluctant to step back and reevaluate, readjust, keep it at a range in which I feel comfortable. Like I said, trying to catch my opponent right now stepping in, and hopefully do a lot more damage, maybe land a cross and then a hook to follow up to stun my opponent. But right now it's been a fairly competitive round. Both have been back and forths here, figuring out the game plan, and because it's not a 5-round fight, stamina isn't crucial here. I can look to expend a bit more stamina than I would usually, but Normally I take the first round off in a 5-round fight to really analyse my opponent. However, when it's a 3-round fight, that luxury just isn't there, because after your opponent wins this round, you need to win both the next ones, of course, to win the decision, and that's not the easiest thing to do, especially with at this weight where knockdowns can happen at any point, or stuns, and that can really change how the judges score the fight. So bearing that in mind, I'm coming out in the second round and hoping to have in my head formulated a better game plan, catch my opponent as he was swaying with a leg kick, and then instantly get stunned as a result of it. So right now my opponent is in the driving seat in terms of damage done, because that was a big shot, and you can see by the head health that my opponent's done a very good job in regards to wearing down my block and wearing down my head health also. Managed to get the takedown here, and this is where you are going to thrive with Jack Hermansson. Get your opponent into side control, work those elbows, deny transitions, get to top mount, look for the armbar. When in sprawl, look for the guillotine, take their back, go to back mount, go to the rear naked choke. These are just some of the most viable options to use with Jack Hermansson, and I feel like over the duration of a 5-round fight, the possibilities are only going to be more and more easy to finish the fight, because your opponent's going to be tired. And if you lock in that rear naked choke, which is powerful as it is now, but if you lock it in with Jack Hermansson, the success rate is going to be very good. I look forward to using Jack Hermansson in a 5-round fight, and maybe uploading that in the future, depending on how well this does, just to showcase to you guys that he is a very viable option to use in this weight class across 5 rounds, competing with the elite of the elite, and hopefully some higher division players. I think right now, at the time of recording this, I think my record is 27-30, and that's predominantly because I switched to the mauling video styles, and I'm just mauling my opponents. And I'm going on a tear right now. I'm beating very high level players. I've beat 2 guys in the top 100, and they just ended up rage quitting. I think I'm in division 16 as it stands, and I'm on a 16 fight win streak, so currently just running through the division. And I think this streak all starts here from using Jack Hermansson, which I was just picking up win after win after win, and I was thoroughly enjoying using him. And right now you can see the work that's going into the ground of denying transitions, softening up my opponent's head with elbows. Go for a bit of ground and pound here, which is Jack Hermansson's ground and pound is very underrated. My opponent slips, and this is where you've got to be careful coming up against high level players, especially Whittaker, that is very powerful. My opponent reversed the position. Luckily we're against the cage, and then I managed to get into the full guard transition, reverse the position, and back on top. So overall this round doing quite well in terms of control time. I know my opponent did get the stun off, so this round potentially is leaning towards my opponent. And again, this is one thing I noticed, and this is why it's crucial to pick up little habits, that I know my opponent is very good at reversing the ground and pound transitions, and that's something I've got to be careful with going into the next round, because the next round I'm going to look to do more of the same. I'm going to look to get my opponent on the ground, wear my opponent out, and going into the final round, I think I'm down on the judges' scorecard, so I'm going to be looking for a finish, just because I don't want to leave it to the hands of the judges. You can see the stamina in either corner right here is that I've done a better job in maintaining my stamina to a higher level, utilising it. Turning takedown here, get straight into side control, and that was a big takedown off the bat, center of the octagon, so my opponent can't use the cage wall to get up. And here I'm just going to deny, and you know, it's more of the same thing. This is what you've come to expect when watching my videos, and Hermansson is so good at controlling this position. Like I said, often or not, Hermansson on top is going to be unreal. But don't forget that if you are fighting against a wrestler like Derek Brunson, Hamzat Chimaev, Yoel Romero, he's also good on off his back, so don't be too worried. He's got very good transitions and reversals, and can throw up crafty submissions off his back. My opponent ended up reversing the position, and my opponent was just doing a very good job with the ground and pound reversals, opts to get up. And I know now that I need to get this fight back onto the ground ASAP, because the longer it stays on the feet, the more likely I'm going to get caught with a strike. Shoot for a single leg takedown in which I turn. The takedown before that was a double leg in which I turn, and I went in the same direction because I noticed that my opponent had some difficulties in blocking that, and I just switched it. So I switched from a double leg to a single, just to give maybe my opponent a different look. However, I did turn in the same way. So Had my opponent picked up on that, probably would have denied that takedown. End up in top mount here, and it's always hard if you don't pre-deny that transition. It's very, very hard to actually get the block off, but my opponent did a good job here. The thing I was setting up really right here is the Kimura, which transitions to an armbar. Like I said, that has been one of my favourite submissions across the whole game, across all the seasons. I think it's only been replaced as of recently by the armbar from side saddle or crucifix. But as soon as I locked this in, I knew that the fight was pretty much over. I didn't see my opponent getting out of this just because of the stamina levels, and that's the main thing you've got to wait for when you're trying to get submission finishes. As soon as your opponent stamina is flashing or gets to a position where you have a significant advantage, definitely just go for the submission. Even if you're not too confident with them, go for it. You might surprise yourself and pull off a good victory, especially with transitions like that where it just boosts it so much. And in the final fight, we're coming up against another Michael Bisping, and this is a pick that I've seen a lot whilst fighting a middleweight. I think that a lot of people are using Michael Bisping, which is, he's a great counter to Robert Whittaker when it comes to the feet, just because of the cardio in boxing. However, obviously when the fight goes to the ground, Robert Whittaker has a distinct advantage with the wrestling side of things. And yeah, you can see that my opponent early on's throwing heavy, working those legs. Use the teep kick to push my opponent back. He throws the spinning back fist, and that's something instantly I'm going to have to install into my brain, that my opponent will be looking to utilize that, because that spinning back fist is so powerful, and if it lands at the right time, does a lot of damage. My opponent's also throwing those haymakers to try and get a big stun off, and with Michael Bisping players, once they stun you, they're going to swarm you and look to get you out of there. I know that the route for success would be to take the fight onto the ground traditionally, but I'm trying to work the stand up here, show my opponent that I'm not scared to stand and trade, but approach it from a more technical stance. I'm going to look to pick my opponent from a distance in which I feel comfortable, whether that be boxing or kickboxing. But because I have a big reach advantage here, I'd rather it be at a kickboxing range, especially when Michael Bisping has such powerful hooks and overhands, which when utilised correctly can do a lot of damage. And you can see that my opponent's really pressure heavy here. I'm backing away, trying to keep the distance, and I'm also trying to work the body. See, these teep kicks install into my opponent that as soon as he gets close, I'm going to push him straight back and keep out of the range in which I want to fight. And that's exactly what you want to do when you're fighting a fighter like Bisping, who doesn't have the reach advantage and is the smaller fighter. You're going to look to push your opponent back and keep your opponent at range, and that combination there was absolutely sublime. I worked the body and worked the head, got the good stun off, keeping the head off the center line, but got caught by about 400 hooks there from my opponent, who just literally, look, as you can see, starts spamming those hooks. So in order to counter that, I'm throwing the cross and the hook. Flying knee lands there, my opponent goes to the body, and whenever your opponent rips you to the body like that, just throw an uppercut at the end of it. It will be pretty much a free hit. Right there, I think I was trying to move my head, but my opponent did a good job of landing the hook. Shoot for a takedown, in which it gets denied, so that's a good job to my opponent. It's the first takedown I've gone for in this round so far, and my opponent done a very good job in denying. And as you can see, going straight to the body, my opponent's using a lot of stamina here. I understand it's a 3-round fight, however, my opponent probably should have conserved a bit more stamina. It looks like he's going for a very big finish here. I think my opponent could tell that the more technical this fight stays, the less likely is my opponent will win. So trying to turn it into a brawl, which I can understand, but Jack Hermansson is down to brawl. If I catch you with something big whilst the vulnerability is up, you probably will get rocked. And then my opponent shoots for a takedown here. I'm not sure if that was just for points or just an accident, but regardless, didn't expect that, so my opponent got the takedown. And going into the second round here, I know that my opponent is there to get caught. As you can see, stamina management crucial, roundhouse to the body. That's one thing that did feel notoriously slow while using Hermansson, was the kicks to the body. The roundhouses to the body didn't feel great, and that's a tool I do like to utilise. However, I just, substituted that with the teep kick constantly, and the teep kick feels very fast in the knee, so that's what I substituted out for the roundhouse, if you will. But the body work's really paying dividends here. Michael Bisping's stamina's disappearing, and then if you just look at that finish, it just rips the body. So this was the fighter showcase with Jack Hermansson. Like I said, let me know if you enjoyed this video, and your thoughts on the next video, whether you like it to be the morning video or a GSP versus Usman video. I am using Usman. It's a good fight against a good opponent, so let me know. Thank you for all the continued support on the content. I really do appreciate it. Like I said, I appreciate the feedback. I try and interact with you guys. I want to build a little community. So if you are new around here and want to see more UFC content, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to leave a like. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.